to have a look at a pen that was very, 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 very much requested. So, here we go. Pilot pen, Custom Heritage 92. Favorite pen for many people, I know that. It's one of the piston fillers that Pilot does, so it's always popular. And we're going to have a look at it. Now, I picked up this pen at penchalet.com. Very pleasant experience, and I found it particularly surprising. The pen was here in 4 days, which from the US is quite good. Usually stuff arrives in a good week, 2 weeks, but 4 days is very, very fast shipping. So, a very pleasant experience. Let's first have a look at the box. I'm going to cover the parts of the pen. I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then we'll do a writing sample. Box. Nice box, display box. Pen is clearly not in there right now, and yet now it is. Always nice. You can see the pen when the box is closed, so nice gift packaging. Then there is this little thing which you can take out if you want to, although there's nothing under there, so it would be kind of pointless, but if you really want to, you could. Box. Simple box. I don't mind. Let's focus on the pen. Here we have the pen. Let's look at the parts. Top of the pen. Simple finial. Not much going on. Sort of bubble in there, but no logo or anything. We have the clip. Simple clip. Then a center band. Let me try and block the light just a tiny bit from the side. Center band, clearly clear cap with one of those grey inserts. Drive me insane. The center band says Pilot Japan Custom Heritage 92. And that's it. Then there is a little lip. Little lip of the cap right there. And then we have the barrel and the piston mechanism. So this is one of those pens you only fill from an ink bottle and you cannot put a cartridge in. Clip is very stiff, but it does work. Cap unscrews. Then you have a section. Section, very simple, tapers down, flares out just a tiny bit, and then you have a nib. It's a gold nib. Number 5, it's a Pilot 14K 585, and it says B for broad and has some scroll work on it. And then you have a, well, what shall we call that, grey, very dark grey feed, plastic feed. And you can see that in there because the section is transparent too. And of course, you know, thinking about a completely transparent pen, that you can always see the ink level and see the ink move, which is fun to many. Hence the appeal of clear pens. This one's still stickered broad nib, and this is one of those instances where, as often, a Japanese nib is one grade finer than a Western nib. It's a good medium nib, I would say. Okay, there you have it. In hand, it's not an enormous pen. It's not tiny either. I would say this is a pretty standard sized pen. If you want to, it posts fairly deeply. Goes in up to a little over half of the cap. So I think that's very comfortable. It doesn't turn into a huge monster, and it does add a bit of length, which I find pleasant for the size of my hands. So there you have it. Now, what about the pen? What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? Writes well. Nib is fine. No issues. Nice, smooth. Has a tiny bit of spring to it. Not semi-flex, nothing like that. But it's nice and a little bit soft. Nice, pleasant gold nib. Of course, I assume rhodium plated, but in any case, it's not gold colored, which matches the trim of the pen well. But it writes. It writes very well, and that's always very important. Very nice, I think, is that it's a piston filler. People like piston fillers, large ink capacity, self-filling system, so you don't need cartridges or a converter or other parts. So that's quite nice. Something I did find is that there is, I can't do that right now because there's ink in it, but if you screw the converter, the piston back in so that there's a little bit of a gap between the piston turning knob and the barrel, there are slits, so the metal part is not completely round, there are slits you could put a little wrench into. I tried the TWSBI wrench because that fits on Pelican 800s, M800s and M1000s, but it doesn't fit here. It's just a little bit too small. So if you are particularly handy and you know how to use a metal file and you have a TWSBI wrench, you can always file down the TWSBI wrench just a tiny bit and then I think it will fit. Whether that's going to crack the pen or the piston is glued in place, I simply do not know because I have not tried. So please do that at your own risk. But if it is absolutely necessary to disassemble it, and I can see how it would be, for example, because you have to grease the piston seal, and it may be hard for you to go in through the nib or whatever, then that may be useful. But in principle, I mean, disassembly should not really be required. I seem to recall that when you pull out this nib and feed, I actually recommend you not to do that, but always reason for me to do so anyway. There is a fairly large opening, so if you would put some silicone grease on a Q-tip, then I'm fairly certain you can grease that piston, which is relevant. It's important because at some point, if the piston becomes hard to operate, then it becomes hard to operate the pen, ink the pen, and then it's just hard to use. So all of that is nice. So I like the fact the nib writes well, I like the ink capacity, I like the fact it's a piston filler, I like the way it posts. I think it's a well-rounded pen in that regard, and as to all that, I see why it's so popular. Now let's talk a little bit about things I don't like so much, because there are a couple of things. Aesthetically, piston turning knob seems to be a bit grayer than the rest of the barrel. Same bit of grey at the end of the cap. A choice Pilot made. I think if I were to do this, I would make the whole thing the same plastic, but that's that's aesthetics. To me, the pen feels pretty cheap. It's a plastic, all plastic pen, and plastic has a tendency to feel cheap. There are things you can do. You can put facets on a pen. I think sometimes that helps, makes it feel a little less cheap. In this case, it feels like if I do my best, I can easily just crush this in one hand. Especially with this cap, for example. You have a center band to protect the plastic, but then there is a whole bit of plastic sticking out, and I can just see that cracking. Maybe that won't happen, but it's my impression when I look at this pen. It's also very light because there is so little metal on there, and that's simply the way it is. But to me, that adds to that sort of cheap feeling. My biggest issue with this pen, though, is the price outside of Japan. If you are to buy it in the US, I actually wrote that down, but I mean, street prices, sale prices, $220, something along those lines. In Europe, often the same price, but then in euros. Japanese pens are very expensive here. And if you were to import this from Japan, it's $130. So that's quite a bit less from $220, because I do not see $220 in this pen. Yes, it's a gold nib, it's a piston filler, it's nice, but given that it's all plastic, given that it's not that big a nib, not getting it. Japanese prices are a lot lower, and that's just the choice that these companies make. Same thing with Sailor, same thing with Platinum. Japanese pens in Japan are considerably cheaper than Japanese pens anywhere else in the world. I don't know why, I find that a very peculiar choice, and it makes these pens a lot less obtainable and I think a lot less attractive. Because for $220 you can buy a lot. You can buy all metal pens, you can buy other piston fillers. I'm thinking Lamy 2000, piston filler, gold nib, that does not feel that cheap. So an odd choice. I think this pen is really pushing it with the price outside of Japan. So you might say, well, then let's just all import from Japan. Well, you could. The only problem is then Pilot gives you issues with warranty. So it's not that easy to circumvent, and in some countries, like this country, if you are to import something, you also pay import duties, which of course adds to the price. It can be something like 20-21% of the price, so that it adds up. That's just no easy solution. Having said that, it's a good writer, and I understand why people like it. And that's all there's to it. Let's see how this pen writes. There will be high-resolution pictures of the pen, as always taken by the inimitable gourmet pens on the website sbrebrown.com, as well as dimensions of the pen. I hope this was useful so far, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye bye. Okay, so here we go with the Pilot Custom Heritage 92 with a broad nib, and the ink is Dash Caribbean Sea. Where do you get that? I don't know. It's discontinued. Bit of writing. Nice smooth writing. Lazy C. Fast writing, no skips. There's a little bit there, but I mean, I think it performs really well for writing under such speed. Wetness. It's Rhodia paper. Not a super wet writer. Line variation. You can see there's actually a bit of spring to this nib, so you can definitely squeeze out some line variation. Those of you who enjoy it, reverse writing turns this broad, or at least very fat medium, into a fine, or maybe even an extra fine, but at some point the pen does start to run a little dry. And there you have it. So, interesting pen. Hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye bye. Bye.